she is. I was just about to
Every time.
We
Every
made
time I
it.
forget.
Yep, go ahead, take it away.
Every single time I forget myself. It's just, it's inevitable that everybody ends up there. How many times have I done that to us, Diana?
It's all right.
More than a few. So yeah, so I still see daisies on your sweater.
No.
Same.
Yeah,
Good.
yeah. I'm
Although I
gonna,
would like you to make me some eggs like that.
Yeah, that's not me.
and I expect you to show up next time with bacon earrings.
That's
Yeah,
what I'm
the
gonna do,
bacon earrings.
and my eggs.
Yeah.
Sugar.
And now I'm getting hungry because, you know, I haven't
Well, that's what
eaten
she
lunch
said.
yet,
She goes, I must
so-
be hungry. That's what my secretary said, but
I love it. All right, so let's get formal because it is 2:00 and I am beyond jazzed to jump into this. Am I recording? I am. That's fantastic. So let's go to the people who are watching now and the people who are watching later. We're going to be formal for a minute. I'm going to say hello, everyone. Welcome to PYF Women. I am thrilled today because I have I know so many amazing women, but y'all are three of the more amazing women that I know. So I'm going to introduce, I'm just going to wave as I say your name, Diana Huari, CIO, right, of Dysart Unified School District. We've got Lauren Owens, Executive Director of Technology for Awafria Union High School District. And then, did I get it? I got it.
Oh yeah.
Okay, cool. And then Dr. Amy Trout, who is the Director of Educational Technology and Online Learning for Washington Elementary School District, right? I got everybody? Awesome. And my name is Laura Boone. I'm with Structured Shifts. And we are, I'm so excited to say, dedicated to empowering consecutive generations of leaders by supporting today's leaders at all levels and learning to be their best selves in all facets of life. How's that sound? You like it?
perfect.
Well done.
I'm liking it. Okay, cool. So a couple of months ago, I issued these ladies, maybe a month ago, because I think I didn't give it a lot of time because I didn't want to give you a lot of time to think about it. But I issued an invitation, or maybe it's a challenge, depending on the way you want to look at it. And I asked them if they would join me for a conversation at what I was calling ages and stages. So a conversation with women who are at different ages and stages in their careers, who work in the same industry. So we all have similar or have had similar roles. But we do similar work because we want to see what it feels like when you're in your 30s, your 40s, your 50s, 20s, 60s, beyond. And how does perspective change? How is it the same? And what are we all doing here? So the second challenge that I issued was that we get to do this in about 45 minutes. And right, I know. If our planning conversation, exactly. I don't think we're going to be able to finish any one of the 5 questions that we're going to ask, but I figure it gives us fodder for future conversation, right? So I will drop all of your LinkedIn profiles into the chat while we're conversing at some point throughout. They'll get dropped in there, and then the link to my website as well, so that we can all stay connected. But I first want to note also, before we dive in, that I consider every one of you to be a PYF woman. And what does PYF stand for, Dr.
Put
Trout?
yourself first.
Woo-woo. So everybody gets to put themselves first, and we want to celebrate that idea. And every single woman in this room, the thing that I love about the 3 of you is that, to me, you are strong, you're intelligent, you're opinionated, and you're also incredibly kind human beings. So I think those are just characteristics that can't be more lovely and more wonderful. So now I'm going to dive into some of our questions. Does that sound okay?
Sounds great.
Okay. First question. And again, this is a conversation. This is not a panel where we're, each taking turns. We're all good at interrupting each other. So do it. Interrupt each other all the way. So the first question is, we're not only talking IT. So when I said your titles, everybody here does work in IT. We work in education, IT specifically. But I wanted to note that since we are in that industry, I'm looking over because I'm reading some stats. Women in IT has declined from 35% in 1984 to just 32% today. So in that period of time, we've actually declined the number of women that work in the IT workforce. And women in the STEM workforce account for just 26% of the workforce. And that's a rise of just 5% over a period of time when that industry has added over 1 million jobs. in 7 years. And the interesting fact that we all talked about the other day was that 50% of women leave tech by the age of 35. And so we're not doing men versus women today. We'll save that for another day. But we are focusing on the women who are in the room. And so how do we support each other? How do we help each other make the choice to stay? More of us choose to stay, but not only stay and thrive. So noting that for each of you, what is it that you love about being a woman in a leadership role? Not necessarily just in IT, but being in a leadership position. Somebody jump in and take it away.
I'm happy to jump in. The stat that when we were just first having these conversations about women in 35 tend to leave. So I'm 35 this year. And so that stat specifically is so motivating to me, where I'm like, I want to beat those stats. I want to beat the odds. Like I'm very motivated that way. And so even just hearing it is making me more aware, and just as I network or meet and work with other people, it's just what else can we do to keep people in it? For someone who's very competitive, it's totally healthy and not at all too much. Don't talk to my husband about that. But to me, that just hearing that number is like exciting to me, if that's what we know the cutoff is. Just like when we work with students, we work towards that specific group to see like what else could be done to keep that number from not falling off.
Okay, so you're our target, right? The 35, like we keep you in, we got it going. And we've got the tide stopped. So no, I agree. I think that's really interesting. And I think that's awesome that you find it motivating and you find it challenging. One of the things that, Amy, you want to jump in and share your thoughts? And then Diana, I'm going to ask from our side of things, what things look like.
Something that I love about being a woman in leadership is really just the relationships and connections that I've formed over time, building from district to district or from experience to experience, and just that idea that the world of education is so small, even though we think it's big. And so it's something that I enjoy finding those connections, especially when they're from a while ago and people kind of looking up to me, and also me finding others to look up to along the journey. It's just something I really embrace as I do this work.
Yeah, I love it. Diana, what do you think? Leadership, what do you love?
So for me, I think women are born leaders in any industry. I think that back in the old days when women were managing the household and managing the kids and managing all the stuff, that's what we do. It was even though it wasn't considered a job, it was a lot of responsibility. It was very time consuming, and it's a job. And so I think it's inborn in women. We are just built like that. And I'm not talking 100% women, and I'm not talking 100% men are not. I'm just saying, I think we're more inclined with that. We have that kind of built-in leadership, and it's up to us to, if we want to use those skills that we have and that we're using in our career. But I know plenty of women that have not had a career, but they are definitely leaders. They are definitely leaders in their own home. They are managing everything from, doctor's appointments to this and that and this. And I think just using those attributes, it just enhances how well we do in a leadership role. In any industry. And I find myself pulling from that. And in all the years in leadership, I definitely I'm pulling from those skills, that I use at home with my kids or even my husband or all of that. So I definitely, I think it's a trait that we have, and it's up to us whether we want to utilize that trait in a career or not.
That makes sense. And you and I are, lucky for us, on the later in the career stage of things. I'm
Yes.
gonna do this, and we were talking in the planning meeting, and you and I have talked about this before, like things were really different I hate to be that person, but they were different 20 years ago, right?
Right. And 20 years ago, I mean, in the big scheme of things, is not that long ago. So it's like, again, I'm going to compare, like with my kids that don't know what a home phone is, and they don't know, what a cassette tape is. It wasn't that long ago. I try to tell them I'm not that old, but But in the scheme of things, it's ancient, you know, it's to them, it's retro and it's old. So 20 years ago in this industry was a different world for women. They're just
Yeah.
not that many. I'm concerned about those stats that you said though, because
I
in my
know.
head, I've seen it grow. And I've gone from where I'm the only woman in the room now to where I see lots of women in that leadership
Yeah.
role. And to hear that it's declining, just kind of like, wait, what do you mean? We were growing and we were going so fast.
Mhm.
And so what's happening at that 35 age, you know? And so a lot of it is just thinking about what could be happening at that time for women that makes them choose to leave the industry. It makes me sad, but then I hope that, you know, knowing that they're women, that they're making the best decision for themselves.
Right.
Right. So
So just
Yeah.
a testament to you, Diana, is I don't think I've told you this before, but you are known here as my professional work crush. And so it was, so I would see you present at conferences though, and it would be motivating and like, okay, like she could do it, like she's a mom. And so it would just,
Right.
that was very motivating to me before I got into this role. And so yeah, everyone knows who you are here because I play my work crush. And so I'm like, oh, I have to hop on a webinar, my work crush is on there. So, but just the more women are presenting and just being themselves, like that also is super motivating in a way to maybe that 35, that whatever that gap is, or that drop off of
Mhm.
maybe it's they're not seeing enough people they relate to motivate them. I don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
it worked for me because every time I saw you present, I was like, okay,
Well,
yeah.
thank you so
Yeah.
much. You totally just made my year. That's so great to hear. But I do think it's important, and I am, you know, sometimes I overshare too much, but I do feel like we have, if we can relate, you know, like I don't want to. No woman should be like, this was easy. Everything's just, you know, kids fall right into line.
No problem. Yeah.
Like it's hard. It's tough and it's constant and it's exhausting. So I think as long as we can share those experiences, then you know, like, hey, I'm not alone. Like, because you know, I've been in rooms where I think, why does everybody in this room have it so together? What's wrong with me? I'm so not
Oh, all the
yeah.
time.
Right. And so at least I think we're in an age now where women are becoming more confident, more honest with their struggles, and
Mhm.
we're looking at the struggles as things we've overcome and how we can help other people overcome that, as opposed to, I need to have this perfect face and let everybody know how simple this was for me. My life is great. I mean, that doesn't help anybody. So I think, yeah, shared experiences are definitely a must. And I've used that in my career too with because I've had mentors where I look at and like, how are they doing it when I'm so tired? And then you know
Yes.
when you get them off the camera, they're like, oh my God, let me tell you how horrible it is. But
Let me tell you what really it is.
yes,
Yeah.
but it's
Yeah.
very helpful. So and so like meetings like Zoom, like right now, what we're doing right now, I think is very helpful. Are you trying to get your dog's attention?
Yeah.
Speaking of, I have a dog just out of reach right now that's chewing on one of my slippers. And so
You're like,
speaking of not having it together, and every woman knows the finger snap, right?
exactly. That's right. Like something's going on.
Yeah. Yeah. I was hoping I was off camera doing that. So yeah. No, don't have it the slightest bit together. But I do agree. Like, I think that's one of the cool things about this group and the women that we have in our professional circle, which is also, in my opinion, like a friend circle, is that every single one of us are willing to admit that we, you know, we're awesome and we celebrate each other, but like, I don't have it together.
Right.
As nearly, you know, we don't have, and we also celebrate each other by telling each other that it looks like you got it together, like, you know, because that imposter syndrome, we talk a lot about that. I'm going to go get the shoe. So talk amongst yourselves.
I think you're frozen right now, at least for me. So it looks like you're
Am I
there.
frozen?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Am I back?
Nope.
No.
Oh, now you are.
Okay. But you can hear me.
Yes.
I got the shoe back. So,
I mean, it's an example of all the things you juggle.
That's right.
You know, getting the shoe in the middle of your webinar, or
right.
you know, running to get the sick kid, or dropping off the food for the
Yeah.
potluck, or whatever. Right? Juggling all those things all the time, and you know, it leads to looking like you really have it all together, but internally, that juggle and plate spinning that you're doing with every piece of your life is not always as perfect internally. There's
And
more
that's-
plates crashed in your head than what people see. That the sticks where they spin the plates.
The spinning,
That's what I
yeah.
always think about when I have a lot going on. So in my head, a lot more of them are crashing, but I talk to someone and they're like, "Oh, you're doing great. Everything's fine." And I'm like, "Oh, yeah, I know, of course, right? It sure is. It's great."
And I think we need that. We need to normalize. I think that's what women don't always do for each other, right? And I think we've all learned to do that. And I think that's one of the, especially as leader in leadership positions, there's that distance that we sometimes maintain, which we kind of, there needs to be in some ways, but also with each other, like recognizing and celebrating and just reminding each other that you are amazing, because we're always going to be harder on each other. And then he's just going to go harder on ourselves than anybody else. So I talked about this last time, a colleague say to me one time, I was self-deprecating, and she said, "I don't like when you talk about my friend like that." And I know I've told this, but it lands so hard for me every time. And I was like, "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about myself." And she's like, "Yeah, you're my friend. And I don't like when you talk about my friend like that." And so I remember that constantly, and I've said it to other people, and it just resonates each time, because we're not super kind to ourselves. So, and I just think that's really, and it's just really interesting. And one of the things we want to focus on is talking about the different life stages. I think we all have so much more in common than that the age differences sometimes disappear. And I think that's the intent, right? But one of the questions is what do we as the more mature side of the house offer and bring to the table for people in the younger, earlier stages, and vice versa? Like, how do we not serve each other, or what are we doing that might not be in service? And then what is it that
I can't hear her. Can you guys hear? We lost you. Audio.
Lost your audio.
Feel free to pick up and just start
There we
There we
talking.
go. Now we hear you.
You can't hear. Yeah. Just take it over, because I was basically because things happen. So what is it that we bring to the table for y'all? I know Lauren talked about how Diana's her work crush, so we got that going on, and I'm a little jealous that I'm not your work crush, but that's okay.
I have
So
numerous. They're spread out.
there
I
we
have
go.
numerous.
Okay, I'll take that. I'll take that. So what is it that you look for in the more mature side of the house, and what is it that serves you, and maybe what doesn't as well?
I think my response to that would actually meet both of what you're saying. Sometimes when I'm listening to those who have a lot more experience than I do, my first inclination is to hear negativity, or to hear, kind of a downward spiral where I'm like, "No, we got this, it must be great." But when I reflect on it and step back in those moments, it's really just perspective, and it's their bubbles have changed, and experiences have made that answer, or whatever the reply is, or whatever we're talking about. And so it's something I try to understand, but I also rationally know that I won't always really be able to understand it until I have those same lived experiences and I've joined some of those bubbles. And so it's an interesting paradox, because I'm constantly trying, I feel myself constantly trying to spark the positive in some of those conversations, and sometimes I'll get kind of I have good rapport with the people I'm thinking about, but I'll kind of get a like, "Yeah, right, sure." And I know what that really means. Like I have pieces that I just haven't experienced, or I have a different perspective. But it's kind of both. I have to intentionally think about it like that, as opposed to, oh, they just don't want to hear that, or they don't want to be part of this, or whatever.
And I think there's something to that, right, Diana? Because I think sometimes I know I can totally be accused of being like, "Yeah, you'll get it later." You know what I mean? You'll get it. But that's not okay. You know what I mean? Because it can lead to being dismissive in a way that we absolutely shouldn't be. But I know that there is that balance. So I don't know, Diana, what do you think?
So I think, well, okay, so for me, I think the experiences that you have, uh, they build who you are. And so for me, most of the experience I had that I share from way back when I first started, right now I find humorous. I use those stories because they're funny when you say like, you know, the men won't look at me in the face, or they talk to the man standing next to me, even though I'm the boss. And, you know, I try to use it with humor because now God, I hope women are not still facing that same problems. I'm not saying it's all gone, but I hope that they're not. And now that I'm older and I've kind of lived through all of that, it's made me more patient, it's made me more confident. And back in those days, in my 20s, I didn't say anything when they did that because I was climbing and I did not want anything to get in my way. So I would smile and be like, oh, okay, well, anyway, I'm still going to talk to you, even though you're not talking to me. As we're now, I would be like, hey, I'm talking to you. Like, why are you talking to him? I mean, I think just having that experience, and I hope that people that are coming into the industry, I want them to already have that confidence and not have to go through those kinds of things where you put up with
Yeah.
it because you're afraid if you don't, you're going to lose your footing, and it should not be the case. And it's really everybody, I mean, women and men, but women are smart enough to know what their environment is and how they need to react or not react dependent upon what's going on. But nobody should be insulted. And if you are insulted, now I know there's ways to say something without coming off nagging, nagging
Yes.
or whatever. So but in my youth, it was more like I would internalize, but I was not happy and I was angry and I would take it home with me. And my poor husband would have to live with it and be the punching bag because he just happens to be male. So and I had to get it out. So but now that I'm older, I've realized I still get insulted, but now I know to pick my battles, and I also know how to react without coming across like I'm an insanely crazy angry person. So
Right.
I just would hope that that's what being 20 plus years in IT leadership, that I would want to share with people that are new to the industry, or looking into leadership, is you are confident, you are great, you are amazing, you have all of that, and don't ever doubt yourself just because somebody won't look at you in the eyes. And now you can say, hey, if I'm the boss, so let's have this conversation, or let's not.
Mhm. And Lauren, I think that ties into you're in that position, right? And what do you think about what Diana said? I feel like you're super confident and you walk in strong, and you were, I mean, we're not going to go into like, this is what my childhood, but you were raised to be strong. You were
Yes.
raised to be that, and that's different too, generationally, I think. Not that we're like different generations, but we kind of almost are,
Well,
right?
and I think how I even just interpreted the original question too is I just feel like I've had a lot of really strong women leader models, starting with my mom, not to get into the childhood of just like, why would you think for a second you don't have a seat at the table? Like, I didn't even realize that was a
Yes.
choice. Like, I just assumed I did. And so that has just kind of like helped, how I grow and how I lead, but seeing that even in the workplace. And so one thing that I'm always going to try to do, and I see, and Laura, I've seen you do this all the time too, is when someone has a good idea, when a woman has a really good idea, being like, yes, Laura, that was awesome, and just elevating it every time you can, because that's not second nature for people. And it's like saying people's names and intentionally highlighting them. Like, I've had so many women leaders do that for me, that it makes such a difference. And it's so small, but it makes such a difference. And so I think about that constantly every time there's a leadership meeting or there's a room when there's maybe a gender imbalance. Like, I'm always thinking about trying to emulate that, because of course we have a seat at the table. Why would we think we don't?
Right?
But
Well,
yeah.
yeah, and that's a totally different perspective, because I know growing up, going into, it's only been, maybe the past couple of years that I've realized that a seat at the table is even possible. And so, and if you look behind Diana, even the saying that she has behind her says, if you don't have a seat at the table, bring a folding chair. Like, that's badass, right? Like, I think that's really
Yes.
cool, you know? And we could keep talking about this forever, and I swore I was going to stick to 5 minutes each for each question. I totally fell apart with that. But we've also talked about some of the other things. So diving into question number 2, are you guys ready?
Mhm.
It's talking about balance. So I'm going to read again. It's interesting to note that women in the workplace are often underemployed. And underemployment, what I learned as I was doing a little bit of research is that underemployment rates shift with age. And the highest period of underemployment is age 35 to 44. And it looks like that gap, luckily, starts to close around age 55 for women. So women are underemployed 35 to 44, and they catch up at 55. So there's a gap of, some time in there. And the data shows that much of this is due to shifts to part-time work, the need to take care of kids, other family matters, that type of thing. And so I was wondering how we all look at life balance at different stages of career. Because I know I chose underemployment for years, right? I was seriously underemployed, and that does have an impact on future career. As you come back into the workforce, you're ready. Like, you've been underemployed working whatever for years. And then one day you're like, okay, now I'm ready for, and people are like, what have you been doing for the past 20 years?
But even that has changed. I remember when I stayed home a year after each one of my kids was born.
Yeah.
And I remember doing my resume, and I was embarrassed to be like, I was out of the workforce for a year, and I didn't want to tell them I was raising children. I was trying to get, that closeness with my infant for a year before I send them off to
Mhm.
daycare and all of that. And I remember being like, I can't put that on my resume. I don't want anybody to see that because they're going to think that I'm not serious about my career. And
Yeah.
I remember feeling that way. And now I get resumes where they're like, stayed home, whatever. And I'm like, yes. I mean, you prioritized what is important to you, your family and your children. And it is a job. It's not like it's not a job. It's a job. I think I've shared this story. I remember being a young mom with kids in daycare rushing to work, and I would drive past the bus stops, and there are these moms with their slippers and their pajama bottoms drinking their coffee, chatting, and it took everything for me not to swerve and run them over because I was like, how are you staying home and I'm pulling my hair out? And but as I got older, I thought, you know what? Good for you. Good for you for prioritizing and being able to make those decisions. And I grew up in my feeling was I couldn't make those decisions. And looking back now, I could have. I had a husband who was making money, and I could have sacrificed some things, but it just had this bad cloud over of how am I going to tell somebody that I was at home not working for a year. I remember being embarrassed, which is so sad. And so I think that coming now with work-life balance, Lori, I still struggle with work-life balance because it has been so ingrained in me that if I'm not working, I'm not producing, I'm not
Oh,
growing.
that's interesting.
And so I still struggle with that. And I tell myself now that I'm looking at the sunset on the horizon that, man, I need to relax. Why don't I have a hobby? How come how come I'm always guilty if I miss a meeting or if I decide to stay home that day? And it's just something that's I think it's just ingrained with years, and I still struggle with it. So I'm more about like learn from my mistakes. Don't do what I'm doing, but
Right. And
yeah.
I'm going to tag on and then tag out, but I came from the opposite perspective. Like I really wanted to, there was a huge part of me that really wanted to have like a career and do all these things and be focused first. And I was actually married to somebody at the time that would have absolutely loved that. But there was something about it that I felt was wrong
Mhm.
to want a career and to be totally cool with, my kids, going to daycare or doing whatever. Like where I grew up, everybody was the mom, or not grew up, but where I lived, everybody was the mom at the bus stop. You know what I
Right.
mean? And it was only, but like you said, it was only my judgment of myself that was keeping me from doing that. Nobody else cared.
Right.
You know what I mean? For the most part. Um, and a lot of the women that I knew did work full time, doctors, lawyers, all sorts of really cool stuff. But for me, for some reason, I told myself the story that wasn't okay to do
Right.
both or to have both. So we're coming from opposite sides. And what
Mhm.
about you? What about y'all, Amy? What do you think, Lauren?
Um,
Because you guys are doing it all.
yeah, I
We're
think
very impressed.
I'm at an interesting point right now because I was very fast and furious in my early years. I was in admin in my late 20s. I
Yeah.
got my doctorate at age 30. I was planning to be a superintendent in a very quick amount of time. And I just hit a point where I just wasn't stopping to really think about what I really wanted. And while I wanted all the things that were happening, there were so many other pieces that tied to self-care and balance that were not happening. And so I just, I hit a point where I realized just I wasn't being my best self. And I wanted more of both sides. And so I transitioned to this space and have found I'll go with some ways outside of work too, to begin to seek that balance and just try to slow down and realize that I do have time. But that's been hard too, because it's been so much of who I was or am for so long. Of just kind of what's next, what's next, what's next. And I'm checking all my boxes, doing everything, I still think some of those things are in my future, but I used to say it was like going to be a step. I just kept doing my steps, and now I'm like, do this for a while, and then maybe I don't know. So I don't know. I relate a lot with that 35 to 44 because that is right in the range that happened to me. It was right at 37, 38 ish, where I just kind of was like, wait a minute. I don't know. I just had to kind of pause and go, what else do I need here? Or what do I need to do a little differently? Thankfully, some of those things were already done. So now I don't need to do those to add on.
You check that box. She's good.
I like that. I like that, finding your best self, and I like the fact that you were able to stop and reflect. And
Yeah.
it never even occurred to me. I mean, as stupid as that sounds, it just never occurred to me to say, I'm not living my best self. I mean, there was no me for so many years, just no me. And that's me. I did that to myself. Nobody was forcing me to do that. It was just, so that's good to hear. What about you?
Wow. This is, I feel like kind of like where you just learn from so many others is, I don't know if it's like watching my parents go through retirement, what kind of a struggle that was to like, who are you without work, or like who your identity is without your job. And just, so I also think so I had COVID babies where at the beginning I came back to work January 2020 after my first son, and then we closed out March. And then at the end of the pandemic, we had my daughter. So during that time, there's so much time at home, right? Like you were kind of forced to think, and someone who doesn't want to reflect or think about feelings and just keep working and hustling. That during that time, because post having kids, your body is like going through some things. And so I then and there was struggling with becoming a mom, right? Like that's a whole new identity. And so since then, I don't have it figured out, but I really try to have my identity not just be mom, not just be career, not just be wife or friend or daughter. Like I'm trying to embrace multiple parts of what make me who I am, because leaning on one that's not going to fulfill me. Like I have to do all different avenues. I don't have it figured out, but like, I know that that's what I need to put my energy into, because I can't just go, it's not healthy to just do one. So that's what I'm trying to work towards. And so might never figure it out, but it was helpful for me to at least know that about myself when I became a mother. It kind of put those pieces in place, know that I have to work on it.
At least you have that rational lens. Like I often will check myself. Now I know rationally, whatever. And then I'm like, I also recognize I'm not responding in that rational way, but I do want to acknowledge in myself what the rational thing is about whatever's happening.
That's great.
Not doing it, but I'm saying it.
I didn't start checking myself till I was over 50 and realized, oh my God, my kids are getting older. I'm missing stuff. Like that's where I started going, wait a minute, what about me? And I tell I have adult daughters, and I tell them all the time that they need to do what's going to make them happy. I don't want them to be so driven that they're not part of the equation, which is where I was. Now I'm trying, but it's hard after 50 and you've been, so long. I tease all the time I'm retiring and I'm going to spend all the time in my pajamas. I don't know. I hope so. I don't know if that's going to be the case. That might drive me bonkers.
I
So
can't see
Right.
it.
yeah,
Pretty quickly too, I think.
I don't know how that's going to work. But
One thing
Of
that
course.
just as you were saying that do something that you love, which it sounds again, just comparing like my parents' generation to how we were raised to like where my husband and we have like a family motto, which again can sound cheesy, but do what you love and love what you do. And so we have this hanging in our house. And so really trying, it's grounding of like, why are we spending, like, again, this job is absolutely insane. It is the most chaotic job, but I love it. Right. Like, and so if you don't love it, why are you going to invest so much part of your life into something that you don't love? Ooh, what's on your sticky?
so this is a Laura Boone thing. So she had posted some videos a while back, and I watched the one with Jim Carrey did his speech at the university. And he said, he's told a story about his father who was an accountant and everything. But what I wrote was, he said, just remember, you can fail at what you don't want to do. So you might as well take a risk at what you love. And I have shared this so many times,
Oh, I
especially with my
love
kids,
that.
because he said his father was miserable. And he gave up all his dreams to become this accountant that he was miserable at. And he ended up getting fired anyway and not being able to go into retirement. So his point was, why not take the risk then? Why spend your whole
Right?
life doing something you hate when there's a chance that carpet could be pulled out from you anyway. So why don't you take the risk and do something you love? So I have shared that. Now it's on a sticky on my monitor. So that's
I love
a
that.
Laura Boone video.
I
That's
love it. I had to
awesome.
switch cameras. I'm having tech problems all over the place right now. It's my world. And I literally restarted my computer right before we came on too. So I need some tech support. Thank goodness I know a couple people who can help, right? So self-care. So that's a great question. One of the things that we talked about in our prep meeting was, and one of you mentioned it, I can't remember whether it was Lauren, I think it might have been Lauren, or Amy, but it was the idea that we think there'll be time later, like to figure all of that out. And it wasn't exactly that. I'm going to look and see. There's assumption that later we'll be able to like pick up our hobbies or whatever. And then Diana, you had noted that, later it's like, we don't know how to.
Right.
Because we've not done it. So the idea of, like you said, sitting in your pajamas and like drinking coffee, I don't think that's going to happen. I think we just stay busier,
I know.
busier and busier.
Yeah.
So we've all got things that, I was asking, like, what is just yours and yours alone? Like, I have a dear friend, and she's not listening right now, and she's gonna laugh when I tell this, but she went to the store and she bought herself like a treat. I don't remember I think it was ice cream or cake or something. And this was recently, and her kids are grown, but she came home and her son ate it. And she was like, well, that's just what happens. Like, I bought it for myself, but by the time I got there, it was gone. I'm like, no, that's yours. Like, that's a just for you thing. So, we sometimes forget that it's okay to have things that are just ours. So, what do we do that's just ours? Does anybody have something specific that's not work, but that's just yours?
I don't pick my kids up at 4. I pick them up at 5 every day because I have to go to the gym to walk. I need that hour to listen to whatever music. If I'm angry, it's going to be some angry music, and I always feel so guilty because that's an hour I could spend with them. But if I don't do that, I am a worse mom. I'm a worse wife. I'm worse at home. And I still feel guilty even sharing it. I'm like, oh, this is taboo. I
You're
can't
kind
tell
of
them.
whispering it too. She's like, I go to.
I know. I
Don't
wouldn't
tell anyone. You possibly
Don't tell
wouldn't.
anybody.
Lauren, I can relate with that quite well, actually. I also go to boot camp after work on my way home, and I have those moments, but I've been going for a while now. And it changes who I am when I get home. And so I'm just better at being mom when I get there, and it creates that transition. It is mine and mine alone, but it still hasn't made it to my list of hobbies. It's more something I do for self-care and that I know I need to do for both mental and physical health. But I'm working. Maybe it'll become a hobby someday. But I can completely relate. I also started changing my language in my head from, well, I don't have time, because that's an example of this, well, I don't have time to go to the gym because I only have so much time with my kids, so I need to get home and be with them. And to, I have time and I'm going to choose how I'm allocating it. I'm going to choose this because it's better for them. So it doesn't always work. I know that rationally. It's that same kind of thing. But I try to tell myself those kinds of things in the moment, because it isn't that I am doing it for them in a lot of ways, so that I can be healthier longer term. I can be better for them when I get there. And so but it is a struggle always of just trying to, I can't tell you I have anything. I can't come up with anything right now that is like really a hobby that I do by myself. And it's largely because of that concept of, I only have, I love being with my boys, and that is the time that I allocate, but maybe I'll work on that. Diana inspired me.
I like it. Well, and I don't think we do a service by saying things like, "Oh, you'll miss it, so soak it up while you've got it," and they're gonna grow. So I don't think like people whose kids are grown do any favors by saying that, because while it's true. It does. What is it? The days are long, but the years are short. I think
Yeah.
that's what it was, right? Like I remember
Mhm.
praying for 8 p.m. because that was my thing back then, was everybody had to be in their rooms by 8. I don't care what you do while you're in there, but you need to be in your room by 8. Not exactly, but when they were little. But the idea of giving permission to have something for ourselves.
And not
Like I
feeling
think,
guilty,
and not feeling
not
guilty,
feeling
because
Yes.
guilty. That's
right,
the
because
big one.
both of them stated what they do, but
Mhm.
both of them said they feel guilty about it, and both of them explained how it was better for their kids,
Right.
not
Mm.
like it was validated, or it was, justified. And so it's hard for any of us to say, you know what, I'm doing this just for me. Like, I'm not sharing my ice cream.
Right.
Go get your own. You know what I mean?
Go
So,
get your own.
um,
Come on,
yeah.
child. Walk to the store. Go get your own ice
Yeah,
cream.
that's right.
Go get your ice cream. Yeah. So I'm going to jump, because we've got, not jump out, but jump to the next question, because we're almost out of time, but want to tap into the opinion thing, right? And I'm looking, and it says there's a belief that as more women in high ranked and visible roles increase, the more inspired younger generations will be to achieve labor market parity and success. And we talked about that, like, and Lauren actually mentioned that before, seeing women who are in positions, feeling confident and standing strong. But my question tied to this is, how do other people's opinions influence our behavior, our decision, our actions? And not only, and we've talked about all of these because I have it written down, how do friends, family, colleagues, and women at the student pickup line influence our decisions? And we've all mentioned all of those, I think, at this point. I wasn't raised to have any like serious expectations of what I was going to be when I grow up. So I thought that was interesting. And I believe the first person in my family to have gone to college, like gotten a bachelor's degree, and the first to get a master's. And so it's not only gender related or age related, it's also, what do our families, what are the kind of, where do we grow up and what do we do? And nothing bad in any of that, you know what I mean? But what do we do about opinions and expectations? And do we change it, or is it changing? Will it change? What do you guys think?
I hope it's changing. It sounds like it's changing just in this conversation. I feel like
It
it's
does.
changing. Yeah, because like for me, it was all about survival. So without getting too much into my childhood and past, even though my childhood was great, my parents both worked, they were great models for me. But in my younger life, I didn't go to college till later. I left, I tried for a year, I dropped out to get married and have a baby and blah, blah, blah. And then, once you have a failed marriage or two, and find yourself with a house full of kids, you're realizing this life isn't good. I can't raise kids without any money. It's not going to work. It's not what I want for my children. So mine was survival. I kind of fell into college and getting this degree. This was not my choice. It wasn't my first choice. It was really about, how am I going to make some money? That's where it was. And it was at the time when technology was taking off, and the market was flooded with open positions. And when I went to college, they were feeding me with, you're going to be wined and dined and everybody's going to want you and they're going to fly you here and fly you there. And, you want it. And then the year I graduated was the year everything crashed. And when I started looking for work, I was up against people with 20 plus years experience, degrees, and willing to work for the lowest entry level position. So that was a little reality of, wow, I just spent 3.5 years of my life and I can't get a job. But I think mine was survival. I mean, I graduated with, God, I hate computers. I don't want to do anything with computers. Why did I get this degree in computers? So luckily there are opportunities for leadership, because then that kind of got me out of the other part. But I think it's in this conversation that we're having, even, I feel like it's changed. I think that women still are survivors and they're always going to look for ways to do better for them and their families. And, but I just don't think it needs to be as drastic when you're talking about hobbies and stuff. I have none. There's nothing. There's no time for me. I mean, there's time for me. I don't even know what to do anymore, because do I want to work out? No. Do I want to go camping? No. Do I want to fish? No. And all these women that have amazing stories, I'm so jealous of. They found what they're passionate about, or they found that the last thing I want to do is go to a gym and walk all day. Walk all for an hour. That does not appeal to me, which I kick myself for, because I could definitely use it. I just can't find what that is. I've talked to my husband, I've talked to my kids, like, what do you think? What should I do? And they're like, I don't know, we've never seen you do anything except work and take care of the kids. They say I can shop, and I go, well, yeah, I can shop, but that's not a really good hobby to have. So I'm still searching. But anyway, I think for this question, I do think it sounds like it's changing, and it sounds like it's changing for the better. And it's very good to hear.
Yes, and it does. And I think what I'm going to dive in to say about Diana is, one of the things I see you're passionate about is younger women and developing them as professionals, as leaders. And you are super passionate about that. So that's how we're going to keep you busy when you retire.
Okay, good, thanks.
Yeah, I'd like you to make posters, or those giant cutouts of yourself, so that we could buy them and put them in our offices.
I know, that'd be scary. I'd be scary if they're like standing behind you in these meetings.
Diana's here. Diana's here.
Just like
Okay.
right here.
Yeah, just look for those cutouts.
Right.
You're totally doing that. You know that. We're going to at least have her face.
Sounds
on like a
amazing.
foam.
At least
Yeah.
on a stick. Well, Diana's here. What do you think?
Uh-huh.
God,
Oh.
nightmares now.
Welcome. Okay, guess what we're doing at COSIN? Yeah.
Yeah.
We're gonna
Great.
have- Oh my gosh. Okay, cool. So this ties into, I think we've really talked about this, but what are the benefits of partnerships between, circles of women of different ages and stages? I think there's a couple of things that we haven't talked about. I mean, there's huge benefit to it, but what do y'all think that we haven't talked about that is also a benefit of relationships between different ages with women and different stages in the work, in work, etc.?
I think something that we kind of touched on, but is true of not just in the workplace, but also neighbors, and when you have women that have chosen that different route, whether it's to stay home or to go to work or whatever, and then you mix them, I do still think it's present, that there is some level of opinion or at times judgment to the other party. And I don't do that intentionally, but I've caught myself thinking, well, of course they don't understand, like I've caught myself in those tracks. But it is, I would go back to, I really believe it's still just bubbles. Like, I don't know that bubble. Honestly, when I do stay too long without working and I'm just taking care of my kids, I'm typically pretty okay going back to work. So I'm like, it is, I think that's a piece that we all could continue to work on, is just loving everyone wherever they're at and learning what's awesome about that, and hearing what maybe isn't so great and being willing to share that, because it almost feels competitive at times, like, well, yeah, you get to go to all the field trips and all this and everything else, and you're doing all that, but I mean, this is all the stuff I'm doing, you know, or whatever. I don't, it's just interesting because I think that piece of it is still there. Where we compare ourselves or we celebrate someone and then, but internally I'm fighting the, you know, well, how come I haven't done that yet? Or, you know, and it's like this constant pressure, I guess. Maybe, I don't know. What do you guys think? How far off is that?
No, I think that's right on. If you feel like you're judging others, but maybe you're really just judging yourself, because I feel that way sometimes. That I can tell you, my oldest daughter's 27, and the one right after her is 23, and they're a lot nicer than I ever was. They are, you know, they have so much love and for strangers, just and for whatever the plight the strangers are going through. They have so much more compassion and empathy, and that I just did not have at that age. So I do catch myself where I'm thinking judgy, and then I start to think about them, and I think, okay, that's my problem. That's really not this person's problem. I'm carrying that,
Yep.
and I'm making it about them when it's really I'm bit, you know, I'm a little bitter because I didn't make that choice, or I'm not doing that, and it's just like you have to. And to me, it's hard to self-reflect and go, "Ew,
I
that's
think
not."
we all just kind
Yeah.
of want all of it.
Not my
And
Yes.
favorite thing.
obviously, it's
Why
not
can't we have it
possible
all?
to do all
Right.
of the versions that we have. So
I
it's
want
like,
it all.
well, this isn't an option. You can't do this and that because those are different routes. You know?
And no routes bad. I mean, there are some bad
Right.
routes, don't get me wrong, but I mean,
Well, I
whatever's
guess
working for you, but right, but just yeah.
Yep.
Well, and I think, you know, not making a choice is still making a choice type thing, right? I'm dropping your profile, LinkedIn profiles. I said I'd do it an hour ago, and I'm finally doing it, but dropping it in the chat so that people can connect with y'all on that LinkedIn, because I think growing this community of people who are thinking in the same ways and women who are, you know, wanting to support each other is such an important thing. What else did we miss? I think one of the things that I think I'm going to ask a question, then keep talking. I think one of the really important things about communicating with and having connections with women of different ages, different state, different everything, is the validation that it's not all in our heads. Like, if you come into a situation and you feel like, I'm not sure I have a totally clear beat on this. You're not alone. You're not in a silo. You're not isolated trying to figure out if you're right or wrong. You can get people with different perspectives and people to say, you know what? No, you're absolutely right. This is the way this is. Or, you know, maybe you want to consider that you're wrong in a nice, gentle, loving, the most loving way, but you are
Sure.
so wrong. You know, having the courage to, you know, have those hard conversations with people. I think, you know, I think that's really important. So I think it's one of the huge benefits. Did I miss anything on this one? Or if we go, will we dive too deep into
I
it and
think
still
it's
be here at 4
important.
o'clock?
I think it's important to find somebody that is your safe space. Because I think we, as women, we are emotional. I mean, we are, whether we internalize it or we show it, we're emotional. So we need to be able to have safe spaces to sometimes just bitch and complain, sometimes to commiserate, sometimes just to say it, to get it out and feel supported by colleagues and friends or people that you feel are safe. And I didn't have that for a very long time. I just did not make those relationships. That's more me not even trying. You know, my sister was my confidant for, you know, she is, but she couldn't really relate because we don't have the same experiences. So finding like this group has been really nice because it's a safe place where I don't feel judged and I can say horrible things. I can say great things. I mean, it doesn't matter. I feel like if I'm having a bad day, I could reach out and just say, you guys, I just need to just tell you about my bad day. We're not going to try to fix it. You know what I mean? Like nobody's going to try to, it's just a night. And I think that it's important that as women, we find whatever that is, that's that safe place that we can express ourselves and get some positive feedback or even negative feedback, honest feedback, and feel like you're not being judged. I think it's incredibly important that women have that. It makes me sad if they don't. And so I really think they need to find whatever that is. Maybe you have to, pay somebody or whatever, but you need to have
Whatever
some,
it takes.
you need to have some kind of outlet. You just need to, because it's a lot to carry on yourself, and we tend to internalize, and we're just making ourselves sick over it. So it's important.
I feel like you hit it so well, just as I've been in this role for a short time. Like it hasn't even been a full year, and the amount of things we've gone through in this time, like I felt like I was losing it. Like there wasn't, again, a super supportive spouse, like is listening. Is like, yes, I know what everyone's names are you're saying, but it's not the same because it's not the same environment.
Right.
And so finding that safe circle, I mean, it still took, luckily, I mean, being a part of ASTI is so helpful and having a safe circle, but without that, that is why people drop off at 35.
Right. I think so.
Because when you don't have
think
that
you're
safe
right.
space, I couldn't handle this for more than 2 years without having some sort of way to just be like, I just need to say this. It's going to be really bad, but I need to get it out.
That's right.
And then I'll feel better.
Right.
And you're not going to be judged, and you're not going to be,
Yep.
you're just going to be loved and supported in all the best ways. Yeah.
It's important.
And it is. So oh my goodness, we only have 4 minutes. So this question, we have 3 minutes really. Where does the work still need to happen? Like, and I'm going to put these two questions together. Where does the work still need to happen between women supporting women? And then what are the things we can do as ourselves, individuals right now, to support women of all ages and stages? So what do you think? Bring it.
I think we need to continue on this path. I think we are all mentors. It doesn't matter how old you are. We can all mentor somebody. I think we need to reach out to those that we see that are struggling. We need to be able to identify those that we see want maybe to move into a leadership position, but you see are struggling. I think we need to make those connections and reach out and bring them in, because a lot of times when people are struggling, like I said, we internalize, we don't share, and we want to keep it to ourselves. So I think it's important that we all mentor and that we're all looking for and supporting each other, and just keep continuing. That stat of 35 is frightening. It's frightening.
Yes.
So I think we need to focus on what is doing that and how can we help.
Well, and the thing that I don't want to say I see it happen, but I have, but where you don't have to tear someone down to lift yourself up.
Right.
And like, I don't know if that's I mean, obviously it's probably social media, a society problem, but just as women leaders, like modeling that there is room for everyone. You can add an addition to a table. You can bring a folding chair. Like you don't have to cut people down to make yourself seem better. And so that, I think, is if we could tackle that as women leaders, like that would be transformational, because I don't see enough of like the lifting happening. Which that's something we could all do, like be intentional about lifting others.
And I know in this group and the other women that I'm saying, when I say this group, I always hear positive, like when women aren't in the room, like talking them up, like the good things about people. Like I always say, I want your ears to be burning because I was saying good things about you. You know what I mean? And we do we all have our moments where we're like, "Wah!" But for them, but every single person that I know here is very intentional about celebrating and speaking other people's names in the room. So I think that's really cool. And like we said before, the modeling, like Lauren brought up, is seeing other women, making it really visible, like we're doing right now. Like y'all are female leaders, and rather than hiding it out or not celebrating, like let's shine the light on it, because that's going to normalize it even more than it already is. And
I think with that normalizing piece, and it's that celebration piece, but it's also just fully supporting and being open about, so I took a day off to go to my kids' kindergarten first field trip, and I told everyone exactly what I was doing. Like,
I
want them to hear this is okay. If something comes up with my family or something that I love and do outside of work, it's going to be okay. And I try to be very transparent about those things, so that it both makes it very clear that that is important to me, but also it's important to me that you do things that are going to, fill your bucket outside of work as well. And so sometimes it's just those little things of not hiding behind whatever it is that you're doing, or so that others see, oh, this is okay. I could consider that if that's something that would add value to my life.
I love that.
Yep.
We are at about 30 seconds. So Diana, Lauren, what do you want to add to what can we do right now to normalize, advocate, make things greater and even better for the women in our world?
I think we should continue these conversations. I think this is just the tip of the iceberg, and I would like to invite others in at some point and get their feedback as well. Because I'm sure there's some great, I'm looking at the attendees right now, and I know right there's
some
a lot of
power in that.
mentorship yes, a lot of power in those attendees that could be contributing as well. So
Yeah, good point. All right. So I'm going to, Lauren, what you got before we wrap? Anything? Did I miss? Did we
She's
miss?
like, I'm
She's
good.
like, wait, what? She was done. And she's like,
No, what you said about I know someone who is a very strong female leader who coined the term positive gossip, and that was her goal last year. And so I just wanted to share, like, positively gossiping about the strong women in your life is such an intentional choice that you can do.
I love that.
I am all about that. Positive gossip. Absolutely.
Good.
All right. That is so cool. So I'm going to wrap us up. We'll stick around for a few minutes. We won't like kick everybody out of the room, but we are going to formally call it done at 3:01. So we took one more minute. But thank you everybody for being here. We do this PYF Women event every second Thursday of the month, and we are going to continue these conversations. The idea of uplifting women, celebrating each other, all the coolness and things that we bring to the table. And just, I love it. Thank you so much, all of you, all three of you, for being here. This was a definite, dream come true for me to be able to have this conversation. So I appreciate all of you. So thank you.
Thank you.
And don't leave, but
Thank you.
thank you. Awesome. All right. I'm going to stop our recording and